I never thought I'd say these words, but be careful, Terranal. I was always told this is the safest, just the safest. But it turns out, watch this video until the end because there will be some interesting material at the end. At the beginning of the century, doctors in the United States began to notice an unusual and alarming increase in the number of children with autism, and it was many times higher than anything that had happened before. For example, in the 1990s, autism was an extremely rare diagnosis. Out of about 10,000 children, only 4 had autism in one form or another. By 2025, it's 15 times more. 60 out of 10,000. So autism has increased 15 times and has become a common condition. What happened? What influenced it? Researchers ruled out smoking and alcohol. Mothers of both healthy and sick children did not differ in these parameters. With the arrival of Robert Kennedy at the United States Department of Health, an extensive study began. And suddenly the name of one of the medications they use popped up. Millions, tens of millions of people use it, including naturally pregnant women. This medication turned out to be Tylenol. Then it became clear that the manufacturers of Tylenol knew about this. Look at the response from a specialist at the pharmaceutical company that produced Tylenol to a pregnant woman's inquiry. This is on Twitter.
In fact, even Tylenol wrote this on Twitter in 2017. We don't recommend using our products during pregnancy.
We do not recommend our products for use by pregnant women. So far, there have been no pregnant men observed. Thank you, wrote the developer on Twitter. What did you ask when you reached out?
So Robert F. Kennedy made huge headlines when he came out and said, guess what is connected to autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder? Guess what it is? It's called Tylenol. Let's listen.
He's addressing studies suggesting a possible link between acetaminophen use during pregnancy and negative neurodevelopmental outcomes, such as later attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and autism diagnoses. Scientists have proposed biological mechanisms linking prenatal exposure to acetaminophen with altered brain development. We also evaluated opposing studies that do not show a connection. The Food and Drug Administration will notify doctors about acetaminophen risks in pregnancy and start updating the safety label today. The Department of Health and Human Services will start a nationwide campaign to inform families and protect health. The Food and Drug Administration notes acetaminophen is often the only option for fever and pain in pregnancy, since alternatives have known side effects.
He just said that there have been clinical studies linking acetaminophen, Tylenol, to autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder if taken during pregnancy. He also said that although it's the only thing that's safe enough to take during pregnancy, it's still not 100% safe. It can cause that because you need to lower the fever. So he gives you hard science. It's hard science that he's giving you, okay? So he's not saying that you should never take this during pregnancy. That's not what he's saying.
The Institute of Health and Social Services advises doctors to use their best judgment with acetaminophen during pregnancy, prescribing the lowest effective dose for the shortest time needed, and only when.
So he says if he's telling clinicians that if you need to prescribe Tylenol to a pregnant woman, do it at the minimum dose and for the shortest possible time.
To this, our crazy leftists, instead of thinking and telling themselves maybe we should reduce the use of this chemical to avoid problems, well, even before any investigation or clarification, well, I would say, they started showing themselves in their usual manner.
United States President Donald Trump caused a major scandal after he linked Tylenol and vaccines to autism. Speaking at a press conference at the White House, Trump stated that women should not take the popular painkiller Tylenol throughout their pregnancy. With Health Minister Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Trump stated that the Food and Drug Administration will begin notifying doctors about what is being used. Tylenol use may be linked to higher autism risk, though the manufacturer denied Trump's claim that the drug causes autism. But health experts, both in the United States and around the world, are expressing shock at the statement made by the United States president. They say there is absolutely no scientific evidence or research supporting these claims.
So, without checking if there are any studies, the left immediately claimed that the manufacturer of Tylenol says it's nonsense. Take as much as you want, even a kilogram a day, and don't worry about anything.
Honestly, there's something very funny and ironic about how a group of communists is valiantly defending the profit interests of the multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical industry, to the point they're willing to take Tylenol on camera. Here's a little fact you could file under good timing. The Tylenol brand was launched in 1955 by McNeil Laboratories and promoted as a fever reducer for children. 4 years later, pharmaceutical giant Johnson bought McNeil Laboratories and Tylenol rights, quickly selling the drug over the counter starting in 1959. This lasted for decades until 2 years ago. After nearly 70 years of owning the Tylenol brand, Johnson & Johnson decided to transfer Tylenol to a subsidiary company called Kenvue. They also got rid of a couple of other well-known brands, including Bandai and Listerine, transferring them under Kenvue's control. Before you consider Tylenol, admit this transition happened at the perfect time. In just the past few months, Kenvue's stock has dropped by about 20%, while Johnson & Johnson's stock has only fallen by 1%. In other words, it seems that Johnson & Johnson has successfully protected itself from brand damage, or at least from a significant part of the brand damage. This happened because the government focused more on Tylenol. Understood?
Just out of the blue. So the pharma giant Johnson sets up a separate company, and now that company is the owner of Tylenol. So as soon as the investigation started, the owners immediately reorganized things so that the main company wouldn't be affected. We're like not involved in this at all. Pretty slick guys, right?
2 days ago, as you may have seen, this government attention reached its peak. The president told pregnant women on camera not to take Tylenol, calling it too dangerous. In the overwhelming majority of cases, look.
Tylenol during pregnancy may be associated with a very high risk of autism, so taking Tylenol is not good. All right, I'll say it, it's not good. For this reason, they strongly recommend that women limit the use of Tylenol during pregnancy unless it is medically necessary. This is, for example, in cases of very high fever, which you feel you can't endure, can't handle. I think that's right.
For big pharmaceutical companies and the media who get millions of dollars in advertising from them, this statement became an emergency. Tylenol generates about $1 billion in yearly sales. Each week, 25% of Americans use a medication with Tylenol's active ingredient. Any damage to the brand can quickly lead to huge financial losses. That's why all the networks rush to bury this story, like Columbia Broadcasting System.
We begin tonight with the President of the United States promoting a link between the risk of autism and the active ingredient in an over-the-counter pain reliever and fever reducer.
Why do you think all the television networks started shouting that this is a lie? Take a guess. 3 tries. Already guessed? That's right, yes. Huge amounts of money come from the pharmaceutical industry for advertising, and the owners, producers, and anchors get it too. They don't care about your children at all. Of course, they won't give Tylenol to their own kids and spouses anymore, but you, well, if you're fools, just stay quiet and take it.
The president is with his health minister, Robert F. Kennedy told pregnant women to use only Tylenol if they can't endure the pain. Scientists and doctors criticize the connection announcements, saying there isn't enough evidence to support them. Columbia Broadcasting System news medical expert Dr. Seelan Gonder joins me now. Dr. Gonder, let's start with the main question. Is there a proven link between prenatal use of acetaminophen and autism? No, John, that's not true. Our evidence doesn't show Tylenol causes autism. They selected a few studies that they believe support their claim.
But the supposed expert says that, unlike the first expert who showed you that, yes, there were studies, but they were poor, incomplete, and not all studies say this. Do you think she's concerned about her income or your health?
So, the main medical associations disagree with the administration, and of course, we can trust them. It's not like the main medical associations were wrong about COVID or transgender issues. World Health Organization Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have weighed in on nearly every major medical issue in the past 20 years. They say Tylenol is safe, and that's enough for Columbia Broadcasting System News. Here's the part where I should say I'm happy to admit that I don't take any position on whether Tylenol actually causes autism or not. I'm not informed enough on this issue to make an informed conclusion. I really haven't done any research on this, so I don't know. It seems very convincing to me that even Tylenol agrees that you shouldn't take Tylenol during pregnancy.
That's what I was talking about earlier. But did the Minister of Health and the President of the United States really suddenly lash out at an American company for no reason? By the way, for what, why, what's the reason?
And now maybe we know why they issued that warning just a few weeks ago. Harvard School of Public Health Dean Andrea Baccarelli led a National Institute on Aging and National Institutes of Health funded study that found a link between Tylenol use during pregnancy and higher rates of neurodevelopmental issues, including autism. He published the study in Biomed Central Environmental Health, which spread widely online. And he worked with researchers from the Mount Sinai School of Medicine, so this wasn't just the first study from some random guy. This isn't an old study, it was done just weeks ago.
Now all these doctors and pseudo-doctors are saying, don't pay attention. And a study has just come out from, well, a reputable source. Gentlemen, it shows that the connection does exist. If you heard something like that, you would probably tell your pregnant daughter to try to take as little of this stuff as possible until things are clarified. Tylenol. Or would you tell her, forget about that study. Go ahead, take as much as you want. It's Harvard Schmarvard, does it even matter? Forget about the consequences that will happen to you and your child. What would you say? Which course of action seems more logical to you when it comes to your child? Then why do these killers in white coats try to persuade us to ignore it?
And if you've been following this for a while, you know that for about a decade, the media has been warning us that Tylenol may cause autism and other behavioral disorders. Look.
It's considered a safe option. Acetaminophen, better known as Tylenol, is regularly prescribed by doctors to pregnant women for pain. But a major new Danish study is challenging this long-standing practice. In the study, women who used this common painkiller during pregnancy were more likely to have children who were later diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. The study is raising concerns tonight that acetaminophen may be linked to autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Acetaminophen is the most used pain and fever medication in pregnancy. We're now learning that women who take it during pregnancy may raise their child's risk for behavioral issues and disorders like Tourette's syndrome.
A new study from Johns Hopkins University has shown that taking acetaminophen late in pregnancy may be linked to a higher risk of having a child with autism or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
A new study from Johns Hopkins University showed that taking acetaminophen late in pregnancy may be linked to a higher risk of having a child with autism or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
A new study from Spain raises concerns about prenatal exposure to acetaminophen. The popular brand in the United States, of course, is Tylenol. The study from Spain included data from more than 70,000 children. It shows that those whose mothers took acetaminophen during pregnancy were about 20% more likely to develop symptoms of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or autism.
So in 2017-2019, this was talked about, warnings were given, but money from pharmaceutical companies, well, let's say, forced the media, mass media, to keep their mouths shut. And now, when the President of the United States has repeated what was said earlier, in fact, it's no longer possible to keep things quiet. And powerful propaganda forces have come into play. Hated Trump is lying again. Okay, let's get back to Harvard. And by the way, to Johns Hopkins as well. These gentlemen are probably the two benchmark research centers in the United States of America.
He really relies on research from Harvard and Johns Hopkins. So this is from Harvard. Acetaminophen used in pregnancy may raise children's autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder risk. This is from Harvard. So maybe they can say that Harvard is now marginal and crazy, and maybe Harvard has a brainworm, or maybe Harvard is just another group of drug-addicted hippies making up fake studies in their treehouse. Who knows why? What does Harvard University know? What doesn't some television writer on antidepressants know? Am I right? When children are exposed to acetaminophen, also known by the brand name Tylenol or as paracetamol, I think that's how it's pronounced. That's what they call it in Europe. During pregnancy, they may have a higher risk of neurodevelopmental disorders like autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. This is straight from Harvard. The study was published on August 14 in Biomed Central Environmental Health. Andrea Baccarelli, Dean of Faculty at Harvard University, T.H. Chan School of Public Health and Professor of Environmental Health, was the senior author. The Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai led the study with co-authors from additional institutions. The researchers analyzed the results of 46 previous studies from around the world that examined the potential link between prenatal use of acetaminophen and subsequent neurodevelopmental disorders in children. That is,
it can't be said that there haven't been any studies. Continued. Or that Trump Kennedy just picked what they liked.
Ken is from Harvard, Snova is from Harvard. The researchers used the methodology of a systematic review of navigational guidance, which is the gold standard for synthesizing and evaluating data on environmental health. This allowed them to conduct a rigorous and comprehensive analysis supporting the evidence of a link between acetaminophen exposure during pregnancy and an increased rate of neurodevelopmental disorders. This study noted that although it should be proven, measures should be taken to limit the use of acetaminophen. This medication is important for treating pain and fever during pregnancy, which can also harm the developing fetus. For example, high fever can increase the risk of neural tube defects and premature birth. So if the mother is sick and has a high fever, you want to lower it, and that's why you want to give it. That's what they say. Yes, you have to take the risk, but the benefits are greater. Give it at the lowest dose and for the shortest time possible.
And you would still recommend Tylenol to your pregnant daughter or granddaughter, let's say.
First of all, if you don't know me, my name is Dr. Christina Parks. I have a PhD in cellular and molecular biology from the University of Michigan, earned in the Department of Immunology. I've studied the childhood schedule and injections for about 10 years. So Tylenol is associated with autism because it depletes the body's main antioxidant, glutathione.
So glutathione gets depleted. Who would have thought this relates to autism? She'll explain.
It eliminates inflammation in the body, and when the body is critically depleted, it can lead to sepsis, or especially in young or premature infants, they can even die. This can lead to issues like sudden infant death syndrome, so keeping glutathione levels up is crucial. And even something as simple as a mother taking vitamin C as a supplement while breastfeeding can be critically important in helping both the mother and the baby replenish glutathione. So what happens if your body doesn't have enough glutathione? It becomes highly inflamed and just can't cope with blood and cellular stress. And an inflamed state of the brain is strongly linked to neurological disorders such as autism or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
By the way, let's suppose the Ministry of Health found out all this information and didn't tell anyone anything. They should be prosecuted then for not fulfilling, I would say, their main duty to protect us from dangers.
28 weeks pregnant. You know, I'll take Tylenol, acetaminophen, and it will work like magic.
Oh, that'll teach them probably. Here's what I don't understand. When it comes to pregnancy, haven't we as women always been told to be careful? So why is this being treated differently? Obviously, the Food and Drug Administration just announced that they will start putting warning labels on bottles of Tylenol and acetaminophen because some studies suggest a possible link.
All right, let's clarify. You liberals hate Trump so much that you're willing to test the science you say you trust. Do you really want to put it into practice and see if it works? That's exactly why people need permission to be parents. And
here's the biggest jerk who...
So we see my successor in the Oval Office making sweeping statements about certain medications and autism which are constantly being debunked. And the extent to which this undermines public health, the extent to which it can harm pregnant women, the extent to which it creates anxiety for parents who have children with autism,
Absolutely, it just slipped my mind. At which university did this guy get his medical degree? However, no one knows in which country he was born or at which university he studied. So maybe he's actually a male nurse or something like a medical assistant. Who the hell knows about his education or his way of thinking? He really looks to me like a Jordanian Arab. I'm not joking right now, by the way. Although maybe then, when they stuff you with that much Marxism, you turn pale and start to look like a Jordanian Arab. Who knows, gentlemen? Be careful with Tylenol and with bottles labeled acetaminophen or phenacetaminophen. Yeah, what? It's the same thing, just the same, yeah. Tylenol's a brand name, that's it. The question arises, yeah.
The libs are now targeting Donald Trump. The liberals are now hurting Donald Trump by legally poisoning themselves and, in some cases, their unborn children. And I would find this really funny if some of these women weren't clearly pregnant and weren't taking a lot of Tylenol just out of rebellion against Donald Trump harming their unborn children. I've seen dozens of such videos where people take an obscene amount of Tylenol, and honestly, I think it's time for someone to dox them and call Child Protective Services for the safety of their unborn children.
The most dangerous over-the-counter drug is probably the one you have at home. Tylenol, even in doses that seem safe. In fact, it's one of the leading causes of acute liver failure in the United States.
It also leads to about 100,000 calls to poison control centers and 60,000 emergency room visits every year. It accounts for over half of acute liver failure cases in the United States. Some studies even suggest that long-term use of Tylenol may affect mood and emotional processing.
And
before the opioid crisis, I think Tylenol was the leading cause of medication-related deaths.
He's definitely not an idiot. Elon Musk said that before the opioid crisis, he believed that the main killer of young people in the United States was Tylenol. Elon Musk, gentlemen, he's an absolute genius. You can say whatever you want about his political activities, but he's a brilliant person. I would listen to him.
These people are literally harming not only themselves, but also their unborn children, which I think is disgusting.
And the fact that they're doing this just out of hatred for Donald Trump and Robert Kennedy Jr., how far can propaganda push the population? That just to give the finger to a supposedly hated fascist, they're willing to risk their health and lives. A finger to hate risking their health? Let's put it this way. I've just never come across anything like that, never seen it. I thought that the maternal instinct was unbeatable. Turns out it is possible. On that sad note. Here. Or maybe the ones that Jutki Lanol made just to spite Trump, Jutki. Maybe they're no longer people, not Homo sapiens, not humans. Maybe there's some new form of protein-based existence. It's possible. Anything's possible. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen. And I also want to say I'm so stunned. It probably hasn't happened for many years.